words of Reverend Dr. David Breeden. We gather into this circle. We gather into this circle of care to dream, to envision, to embody and achieve the compassion we dreamed, the justice we envision, the dignity of each in an ever-growing circle of love and justice. Come, let us worship together.
I don't need two of
I
them.
invite you to rise, in body or in spirit, to join our voices in our opening hymn, number 44 in the gray hymnal. We sing of Golden Morning, with a reminder that we are no longer requiring masking while singing.
Please remain standing as Kathleen Rasmus lights our chalice with words of inspiration by Amy Carroll Webb. How often we seek refuge in this sacred flame from the world's trouble and pain. Today, may our lamp light the way for those who know no refuge, that we may open our minds, our arms, our hearts, our mouths to sing, "Come, whoever you are, wholly new and wholly true."
If there are any children that would like to come forward this morning, I invite you to do so. And if not, that's okay too. All right. All right. It is now time for our story for all ages. I invite you to gather around as we hear a special tale called The Cure by Christopher Weiss. Once upon a time, there was a young girl named Maggie who found out she had a terrible disease and probably would never be well again. She was very, very sad, and although she had many friends, all of them were afraid to visit her because they feared they may catch the disease. So the little girl sat in her bed all by herself and was very lonely. One day she heard a knock on her door. "Come in," she said, and in walked three of her friends. One was a doctor, one was a minister, and one was a magician. Maggie was so very glad to see them, for no one else had been to visit her. Maggie, her friend said as they sat down around her bed. We came to tell you something. Each one of us is going to try to find a cure for your disease. Yes, said the doctor, I'm going to go into my laboratory and do experiments until I discover a medicine that will cure your disease. And I, said the minister, am going to pray every day that you will be healed of this terrible disease. And I, said the magician, am going to look through my books of magic until I discover a potion or spell that will rid you of your disease. Maggie smiled and was happy because she saw how much her friends cared for her. Thanks, she said. We're sorry that we can't stay long to visit, said her friends, but we must rush off and begin our search for a cure. We'll return in 3 days, and surely by then one of us will have found a way to cure your disease. And so, her friends went away in search of a cure, and once again Maggie was very lonely. For 3 days, Maggie's friends did everything they could to find a cure for the disease. The doctor worked hard in the laboratory, but couldn't discover any medicine that would help the little girl. The minister prayed every day and every night that Maggie would be healed of her disease, but the little girl was still sick. The magician looked through all the magic books, but there was no spells or potions that could cure Maggie's disease. All 3 of Maggie's friends were very sad, for they felt that they had failed. After the 3 days were over, the doctor, the minister, and the magician returned to Maggie's house and told her the bad news. We're sorry, they said, but we could not find a cure. We did our best. And the 3 friends began to cry. Don't cry, said Maggie. Before I was sick, I had many friends, but now they're all afraid to visit me. The disease I have is a terrible one, but it's nothing compared to the loneliness I felt these last few days. I know now that loneliness is the worst disease of all. Right now, the medicine I need most is your friendship. The prayer I need most is for you to simply be with me. And the magic I need most is your love. And so the doctor, the minister, and the magician gathered around the little girl and laid their hands upon her. In the silence that followed, it said that they found the cure. Thanks for listening. Please remain seated for our prayer hymn, number 128 in the gray hymnal, For All That Is Our Life.
We are
In the silence that follows the spoken prayer, you are invited to come forward and light a candle for any joys or concerns you hold in your heart this morning. Spirit of love and life, source of all that is. Our hearts are full of compassion, of care, of lamentation, of sorrow, immersed in our interdependent web of justice and injustice, equity and inequity, held together by the bonds of universal siblinghood. We long for a world of growing hope and of diminishing despair. For we live in a land of joy, yes, of compassion, yes, and a land of prejudice, violence, and hate. May we create a bridge between these disjointed worlds, as love and compassion meet detrimental hardship. We live in a world playing home to the marginalized, the vulnerable, seeking a life of equity. Amidst all that is broken, may we fix that which is broken. May you offer your guidance so we may be a people of justice and love, a resistant love, a defiant love, one of dedication and commitment, for precious, beloved lives depend on it. Let us create heaven here on earth and dismantle the systems of hell. May it be so, and amen. a final candle for all that we hold in our hearts and in our minds this morning. If your heart is hurting, know that your community is here to help, as am I. Please reach out with any needs.
This morning's invitation to the offering is by Reverend Victoria Weinstein, who served as our minister from 1999 to 2002. The purpose of the church is to encourage all who gather there to grow more generous in spirit and in action. This is the great end of all the world's faith traditions, to bring the human being closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. We now take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that will support this self-supporting church and its many ministries. The gifts of the congregation will be most gratefully received. For those of you watching the service online, you may contribute to a virtual offering plate using the donate button on our website, or by mailing a check to the church office. Will the ushers please come forward? For all that you give and all that you do for our church and its wider concerns, we give thanks. Hear the words of Bryan Stevenson. I think sometimes when you're trying to do justice work, when you're trying to make a difference, when you're trying to change the world, the thing you need to do is get close enough to people who are falling down. Get close enough to people who are suffering. Close enough to people who are in pain, who've been discarded and disfavored. To get close enough to wrap your arms around them and affirm their humanity and their dignity. Further reflection by Bryan Stevenson. We cannot make progress in creating a more just society, healthier communities, if we allow ourselves to be disconnected from the people who are most vulnerable, from the poor, the neglected, the incarcerated, the condemned. If you're trying to make policies in the criminal justice space but have never met someone who's in a jail or prison, you haven't been to a jail or prison, you're going to fail. I invite you to rise in body or spirit to join our voices in hymn 34 in the great hymnal, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire.
The young Buddha lived a privileged life, born into wealth, abundance, excess. He remained sheltered from the world within the confines of his palace walls, knowing nothing of the plights of the vulnerable and the marginalized. And yet one day, he ventured into the outside world. In his short time immersed in the world of the lower classes, he encountered 3 universal human ailments he had not previously been exposed to: old age, disease, and death. He was close to pain and vulnerability, and as such rededicated his life towards relieving the suffering inherent in the human condition, serving as a religious leader of a faith tradition that prevails to this day. We have another religious leader whose teachings were those of nearness, faith, and love. Believed to have been born himself vulnerable and marginalized within the confines of a stable, Jesus taught universal love. He touched the untouchable, held compassion for the condemned, healing the outcast. Lepers cured, a withered hand restored, a hemorrhaging woman made healthy once more simply by an authentic and caring presence and touch. By treating those deemed worthy as unworthy, he healed the ailments of the body and the mind. He served as a model of a life of faith. Immerse oneself in the world of the vulnerable. Love those who have never known love, and as such, help heal the broken. Know their struggles, offer companionship, and allow any judgment, hate, or animosity to fall to the wayside. What is the common theme in the stories of these faith leaders? Proximity to the vulnerable, the marginalized. This offered the Buddha insight into the human condition as it may with us. This created deep healing love for Jesus as it may with us. This month we enter the theme of justice and equity. What is the difference between justice and equity, and what does this mean to those of the Unitarian Universalist faith? To those of our faith, equity means that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. We address cultural imbalances. Justice means that we work to build a multicultural, diverse, beloved community One where those of any race, class, ability, sexual orientation, gender, identity can thrive. It means changing systems. How do we make these values into lived actions? For equity, we use the resources we have, that of time, wisdom, talent, passion, and, if applicable, privilege or monetary means to create communities that are fully accessible and inclusive. When we engage with justice, we create this beloved community by working together as a faith movement to eliminate the systemic oppression that plagues our world. This stems from the core of our faith, love. This is how we live love in the world. I note that we hold in this space beloveds with many identities, some of them marginalized. May we hold this in love in the words ahead, causing not a disconnect, but a unity. How can we establish peace, love, justice, and equity? Leader in Justice work, Bryan Stevenson, offers 4 successive practices each one of us can implement. The first, get proximate with the marginalized. The wealthy with the poor, the healthy with the ill, the housed with the unhoused, the non-incarcerated with the prisoner, the lawmakers with the drug addicts, the judgmental with the truly suffering. We replace assumptions with fact, judgments with truth. It is then, when we see one another as fully human and worthy, which then sparks the call for true justice work to begin. May those on the bottom not be encumbered with isolation, stigma, indifference, and pity. Instead, may they know they are not alone. As one by one, those who are not marginalized approach with curiosity, compassion, and care. As one by one, we shrink the difference between each other by meeting person to person. As one by one, we offer compassion and care instead of disregard or disdain. Let us grasp hands and ask, beloved, what do you need? And affirm, dear one, you are not alone. The plight of the marginalized becomes our own, as the dehumanized become our sisters, the condemned become our brothers. The second step, change the narrative from one of fear and anger. If drug addicts are seen as criminals and not individuals suffering from detrimental illness, incarceration becomes easy. If Black men are seen as inherently dangerous and violent instead of compassionate, caring, and hard-working, it becomes easy to live in fear and react as such, which is often extremely detrimental. If the impoverished are seen as lazy, indifference appears logical. When we are governed by fear and anger, we tolerate what should never be tolerated. We accept that which should never be accepted. Fear and anger make hate, imprisonment, punishment, isolation, and violence justifiable. So, what can we do as a people of faith and love? Seek out the vulnerable, the marginalized, these broken people, not with fear, not with anger, but with love and curiosity, changing the narrative one action at a time. Our third step, stay hopeful about creating justice even when it's complicated. It may seem unfeasible as we see numerous Black men in handcuffs, our trans beloveds, the victims of violence, the mentally ill unhoused in the streets, immigrants detained simply for wanting a better life for their family. It is easy to throw up our hands and cry impossible. Yet let us see the world through the lens of hope. Hope allows us to believe change is possible even when it seems way beyond our grasp. Jesus created a faith movement healing one body at a time. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. created a justice revolution, one rally, one march at a time. The arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. If we lose hope, we lose resolve, determination, passion. If we lose hope, we lose a movement. The fourth and final step: be willing to do what is uncomfortable and inconvenient. Think of the Buddha immersed in a palace of privilege, exposed to the woes of the masses. His life changed as he became dedicated to eradicating suffering. It is easy to remain in a bubble of privilege, never traveling beyond the comfortable, the known, the easy. It is uncomfortable. One with excess needs those who cannot even afford basic food. It is inconvenient to realize these people who may have been largely ignored, they are fathers and sisters and friends with basic fundamental needs. They are suffering. It is uncomfortable to contrast one's own access with another's detrimental lack, or to leave one's home and one's community and step into the unknown and possibly feared. And yet remaining in places of power and privilege only exacerbates our growing wealth gap and fuels animosity and indifference. Move beyond comfort and convenience, both in mind and in proximity. Realize harsh discrepancies make a difference. No great change has ever occurred within the confines of comfort and convenience. I want to lift up another crucial insight. We are each more than the worst thing we have done. We are so much more. Someone addicted to drugs is not just his drugs. Someone who has done a crime is not just her crime. We need to realize he is a beloved father, a mentor, a being of hope and compassion who succumbed to one of the greatest hardships of life, drugs. We need to understand she is a dedicated worker, a cherished sister, an inspiration to those around her who found herself in a desperate situation and did that crime. We need to know all of this before we judge, and this is what we learn when we become proximate. Let us return to the quote by Stevenson we heard earlier. When you're trying to change the world, get close enough to wrap your arms around the vulnerable and affirm their humanity and their dignity. The suffering, those in pain, the discarded and the disfavored. How much dignity can be mustered while in a jail cell or are covered in cardboard on the street? How can one feel one's dignity when one's most treasured companion is a needle? What a terrifying, lonely, and isolating world. Let the marginalized be held in a metaphorical embrace. Let us say you are not alone. Let us articulate you have dignity and worthiness inherently. Let us show this dignity and worthiness through conversation, compassion, care, and sincere interest. You are worthy of love. Perhaps what people really need is friendship, companionship, and love. What does it mean to say you are not alone? It means I am your sibling, and I will journey with you. Your suffering is now my suffering. Let us reflect on the words we heard in our story for all ages, a young girl ostracized for her illness. She offers, right now, the medicine I need most is your friendship. The prayer I need most is for you to simply be with me. And the magic I need most is your love. May we reach out to the vulnerable, the marginalized, and simply offer friendship, presence, and love. To wrap our arms around a suffering sibling is to realize they need help. Yet instead of assuming what is needed, let us ask the vulnerable what is needed and respond as such, and often it may be uncomfortable or inconvenient. Do the unhoused solely need a check that one can simply sign, or do they need assistance finding an equitable job? Do the hungry solely need a sandwich one can easily hand out, or do they need assistance creating a community garden? Think beyond the simple, make oneself vulnerable, get close and create change, hold all of humanity in a loving embrace. This transitions into his next quote: "We cannot make progress in creating a more just society, healthier communities, if we allow ourselves to be disconnected from the people who are most vulnerable." How can we create police reform if we have never encountered the inner city? How can we find ways to feed the hungry if we had never had a conversation with one who desperately lacks food? How can we counter homelessness if we have never spoken to the unhoused? It is empty and imagined, not full and truly compassionate and based on understanding of the lived experience. We cannot make progress if we are disconnected. We began with the stories of Buddhism and Christianity. I challenge us to view this work through the lens of our own faith. We know who we are. We are committed to equity, to the inherent worthiness of all, and we are committed to justice, towards building a beloved community. It is woven throughout our principles, the way we covenant to be in this world. We are challenged to ask ourselves, how do we actively affirm the full worthiness and dignity, both publicly and through personal interactions, of those who sleep on a sidewalk, who make means through prostitution, who are addicted to hard drugs? How do we, personally and publicly, affirm their worthiness and dignity? How can we keep one from being excluded from the beloved community because of incarceration, criminal record, or untreated severe mental illness? Those are the queries I pose to us as a people of faith. We have the roadmap. Proximity comes first. We are further called to disengage from fear, to maintain hope, to lean into discomfort. Furthermore, as Unitarian Universalists, we affirm and promote the interdependent web of all life. Through our interdependence, we are embraced in the siblinghood of all humanity. We cannot let our sisters succumb to heroin, our brothers slip into the world of the unhoused, our non-binary sibling get lost in the endless maze of the incarcerated. It tears apart our interdependence at the core. We become a disjointed mass of suffering individuals. Instead, we are called to get proximate. Instead, we are called to brace one another with love, compassion, friendship, and presence. No matter how vulnerable, how marginalized, you are not alone, but held in the embrace of all humanity. Let us grasp hands and journey together. May it be so, and amen. Please rise in body or spirit to join our voices in hymn number 323, Break Not the Circle. Dear beloveds, we know what we are called to do. May we leave this sacred, holy space and bring our love to the world. Called towards equity, called towards justice. As the people of faith, may we get proximate, may we let go of fear, may we find this day and every day a beacon of hope, and may we get uncomfortable. For this, and only this, is the foundation for changing our world. Go in peace and amen.